Okay, so you really want me to watch this Ricky Gervais video. I haven't seen it before, so you're going to get a fresh reaction to it. I think it's quite short, so let's just play it.
Yeah.
Why does the universe exist at all? Why is there something?
But surely the bigger question is not why, but how. Well, why is irrelevant?
Okay, fine. How is there something? Because you think of God as the prime mover. How is there anything instead of nothing?
I don't. This is
very Catholic.
Is there a prime mover? Is there a demiurge that started everything?
Well, outside science and nature, I don't believe so. Because the interesting thing is, this is the thing, right? So, I'm an agnostic atheist, technically. Agnostics means no one knows whether there's a God. So everyone's technically agnostic. We don't know.
That's true,
So
that's true.
An agnostic atheist is someone who doesn't know there's a God or not, as no one does.
So you're not convicted of your atheism?
Well, I am.
Sure.
No, I am, because atheism is only rejecting the claim that there is a God. Atheism isn't a belief system. Atheism. So this is atheism in a nutshell. You say there's a God. I say, can you prove that? You say no. I say I don't believe you then. So you believe in one God, I assume?
In three persons, but go ahead.
Okay. So you believe. Okay. So. But there are
we won't go there.
3,000 to choose from that have been, you know, people who believe in.
I've done some reading, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So
Ricky's counted all of them.
You believe in you deny one less God than I do. You don't believe in 2,999 gods, and I don't believe in just one more.
Right. Do you ever have a feeling of great gratitude for existence?
Of course.
Do you ever have?
I know. The chances are billions to one that I am on this planet as me and never will be again.
And I know I can't convince you that there is a God, nor do I really want to convince you there's a God, but
no.
I can only explain my experience, which is that I have a strong desire to direct that gratitude toward something or someone.
Of course, no, of course.
And that thing is God.
We're mortal. We want to make sense of nature and science, and it's too unfathomable that everything in the universe was once crunched into something smaller than an atom.
But you don't know that.
Well,
you're just believing Stephen Hawking, and that's a matter of faith in his abilities.
Yes.
You don't know it yourself. You're accepting that because someone told you.
Yeah. Well, but science is constantly proved all the time. You see, if we take something like any fiction, any holy book, in any other fiction, and destroyed it, okay, in 1,000 years' time, that wouldn't come back just as it was.
Yes.
Whereas if we took every science book, right, and every fact, and destroyed them all, in 1,000 years, they'd all be back, because all the same tests would be the same result.
That's good. That's really good.
Okay, so let's stop it there. Go back to the beginning, right?
Wait, so why do you think this is particularly worth critiquing?
Because it's short and it packs in pretty much. Well, no, what I mean is it's short, and it packs in so many arguments that are at the fundamental core arguments of kind of what you can call the new atheist movement, of which Ricky Gervais is a popularizer.
Yeah.
So it's a very good opportunity to look at it, you know, from the tongue of somebody who is quite eloquent with respect to his beliefs and his views. And so you're kind of getting the best version of the argument being put in a public audience.
Well, it's in catchphrases, but
it's in catchphrases, but it
conveys the essence of the popular arguments quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you go back to the beginning, and then we'll just play it, and I'll tell you when I want you to pause, and we'll take it one by one, I think.
Okay.
So just go right to the back.
Why does the universe exist at all? Why is there something?
But surely the bigger question is not why, but how. Well, why is irrelevant?
Okay, fine. How is there something? Because you think of God as the prime mover. How is there anything instead of nothing?
I don't. This is a ridiculous
Is there a prime mover?
If
is there a demiurge that started everything?
Well, outside science and nature, I don't believe so.
Okay, stop it there. Stop it there. So outside science and nature, he doesn't believe that anything exists, basically. Okay? Now,
there's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack there, because science and nature are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Science isn't a place.
Yeah.
Right? Nature isn't a place.
Yeah.
Okay. So what he's using as science and nature there is kind of a catch-all phrase for things that have been proven to exist.
Well, he's basically saying, so what he's really saying is outside of science and nature, I don't believe in things that don't exist.
Yeah.
And by implication, which he makes more explicit later, he says, therefore, he's basically ruling out the existence of God.
Yeah, so he's positing from the beginning of the conversation
That you
God
cannot
exists
have a
outside
prime
of
mover,
science
you
and
cannot
nature.
have an entity which is independent of nature, which has created it. Because he
Yeah.
says outside of science and nature, I don't believe these things can exist, which is another way of saying, I think science, you can only define science as including everything apart from God.
Yeah.
So science and God have to be exclusive.
Yeah.
And nature, now nature is really just a word that's really used for reality. It usually means, material reality.
Yeah.
But the deeper question is, what is ultimate reality?
Yeah.
And what he's therefore asserting is that material reality is ultimate reality,
Yeah.
which means his argument is already circular, because he's saying, I only believe in things which are material
Yeah.
and which can be investigated, let's be generous, purely through the means of science.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
he's saying God cannot be part of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's already circular, because he's ruling out the fact or the idea, the possibility that science can uncover evidence for the existence of God.
Yeah.
And he's also ruling out the possibility that God is ultimate reality and is ultimate nature.
Yeah.
So he is saying, I'm being so rational because I believe in science and nature,
Yeah.
but he's actually saying, I am rejecting the possibility a priori from the beginning
Yeah.
that science can lead to the existence of a transcendental entity that is eternal and that is creative,
Yeah.
which created the universe.
Yeah.
And I'm rejecting the possibility that that transcendental entity is ultimate nature, is ultimate reality.
Yeah.
So in the name of openness and open-mindedness, which is what the new atheists like Ricky purport to represent, he is actually from the get-go excluding
Yeah.
religion or religious claims from even having a seat at the table.
Yeah.
So it's a closed-minded actually belief
Yeah,
system.
it's kind of like a catch-all phrase of saying, I believe in truth and I don't believe anything other than truth, but you believe in falsehood.
yeah.
From the get-go. I mean, what do you make of his kind of talking about nature or the laws of nature? And he goes on to talk about the laws of nature, I think. I can't remember. I think he talks about the laws of nature a little bit and talks about how, well, that's kind of what nature is about, isn't it? He's using the word nature to as a catch-all phrase for the laws of nature, or what is the discovered laws of nature. So what do you make of this kind of starting point from the laws of nature? I mean, people a lot of the time take it as a starting point, and it's weird because, it's a kind of a modern day version of sun worshipping, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, people used to worship the sun because they're like, oh, there's this big golden globe in the sky which is giving us all light, right? And so it's really beneficial to us. So they were taking the sun as the starting point. They were taking a material thing as the starting point.
Well, and also, part of the irrationality of being a sun worshipper is because there's no evidence that praying to the sun can actually affect the things on earth. That you're praying to something which has, and you're putting, you're attributing an entity, i.e., here the sun, with powers that it doesn't seem to have, and there's no evidence that it actually has.
Yeah,
that's part of why it's such an irrational thing to do.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what they do with the laws of nature.
Okay, right.
That's what new atheists do with the laws of nature, because what Ricky, he doesn't make this explicit here, but this is part of the new atheist and this isn't just new atheism, this is older atheism. This is atheism. It's basically that ever since the time of Democritus, etc., that the materialists say that all that really exists are the laws of nature.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can explain everything through the laws of nature.
Yeah.
And this is what Stephen Hawking says. This is what Dawkins says. And Dawkins has actually said that he reveres the laws of nature.
Okay.
So it's almost like this relationship of religious fervor for the laws of nature. And the laws of nature are invoked to actually explain everything. They can explain apparently the creation of the universe. This is a great sentence from Stephen Hawking where he says, I think this is basically the quote. He says, actually, can I get the quote? Can I get the quote? I'm going to get the quote. I think the universe was spontaneously created out of nothing according to the laws of science. I think the universe was spontaneously created out of nothing according to pre-existing laws.
Okay, fine.
So, I mean, that kind of goes to demonstrate that they put so much stock in these laws. And actually, when you think about the laws of nature, you actually think, what does that mean? What does a law of nature mean?
Yeah.
What it actually means is that throughout history, we've observed that things behave in certain ways from, planets, which is how it originally was. And then with our modern technology and modern investigation, we've understood that particles behave in certain ways. Yeah. And we're able to abstract certain mathematical equations, which can probabilistically give a description of how they're going to move, right?
Yeah.
So and quantum mechanics kind of makes it all a bit fuzzy anyway. But you can have a very good probabilistic prediction of how things are going to move, and how particles are going to behave, and therefore how the biggest entities are going to behave. But they're not perfect, and they can't explain everything, and that's the idea of a dream of a final theory that unifies everything. But if you think about what is a law, then what we're really saying, what they take it to be, is it's a mathematical equation.
Yeah.
But how does a mathematical equation actually enforce itself on a particle?
Yeah.
Because you have particles that are separated by 100 galaxies, and they can behave in exactly the same way. So there's something that is connecting them.
Yeah.
There is something which is underlying, which is regulating their behavior to act in a certain way. What is that?
Which is diffusely equal throughout space and time.
Yeah, it seems to be, and time as well, because
it's related to the inherent nature of the particle rather than to the.
Yeah, because I mean, there's no time-traveling physicist or space-traveling physicist going ahead and saying, okay, act in this way, and then this particle acts in the same way, right?
Yeah.
So there must be something underpinning things, right? And that's why they say that there's a law, which is this mathematical equation. But a mathematical equation cannot enforce itself on any particle.
Yeah.
This is the key point.
Yeah.
How does a mathematical equation actually enforce itself and regulate that behavior? It can't, because all it is an abstract thing.
Well, actually,
it's
the mathematical equation...
It's just a description of how something works. It's not prescriptive.
Yeah, well, the mathematical equation is actually a derivative of the observation of the particle's behavior.
Yeah.
We're observing the particle's behavior, its habit, as Rupert Sheldrake describes it, rather than a law. And from that, we're deriving mathematical equations. So actually, the mathematical equation is just a descriptive phenomena of what the particle is itself doing.
Yeah.
So the question is, why is it doing that?
Why is it doing that? Why is it acting in that way?
Yeah.
And just saying there's a law of nature doesn't explain anything.
No, because actually it's circular, because you're saying this thing is doing this because it's a law of nature. What is that thing? Oh, well, that's the law of nature. And what's the law of nature? It's the thing doing that thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, the law is the behavior, and the behavior is the law. So you can't derive the behavior and attribute it to the law when the law is itself a description of the behavior.
Yeah, and actually the whole thing doesn't make sense, actually, because it can only make sense in one particular way. And
I've got the evidence for it.
Okay.
I've got an example of how it has been applied in a rational fashion, the concept of law, and I'd like to put it to you. So chapter 41, verse 12 of the Quran actually has a statement which is actually related to this specific question of a law of nature. Okay, so it says, speaking about God, okay, so God says in the Quran, then he, in other words, God's talking about himself, then he turned to the heaven while it was something like smoke, and said to it and to the earth, come ye both of ye willingly or unwillingly? They said, we come willingly. Okay, now heaven and earth are classic phrases in the history of everything, which means basically the universe, everything, heaven and earth, okay, material phenomenon of all types, okay, and here God basically applies an injunction on it, on heaven and earth, on all of it, says to both of them, while they're in a state of like something like smoke, okay, in a pre-formed existed state, okay, it said, come ye willingly or unwillingly. That's what a law is. A law is, you have a government, you say to the citizens, all right, you're all going to pay tax now. We're increasing the tax from 45p on the pound to 46p on the pound.
Yeah.
You know, it's whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
This is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the imposition of will upon matter.
Yes.
That's what a law is. And that's exactly what is described in the Quran in this verse. And the difference with this is that God has willing citizens, whereas governments don't often have willing citizens, because heaven and earth reply, we come willingly.
Yeah, and actually analyzing that further, we can I think understand exactly what the true reality is, because as you said, a law is something which a sovereign power imposes.
Yeah.
And the better the obedience to that law, the better the behavior.
Yeah.
Right? The more regulated the behavior. So
the more uniform the behavior. So if you're seeing a universe full of incredibly well-regulated behavior that is faultless, yes,
it indicates the existence of a sovereign with absolute power that cannot be disobeyed.
Yeah.
Now, let's think about that in the human realm. In the human realm, we have nations which some of them are more lawless and have much weaker governments, and some of them have much better governments.
Yeah.
And one of the key features of a more developed nation and one with better governments is one in which you have better regulation of people's behaviors because people are more accountable to the law.
Yes.
Right? You have less corruption.
Yeah.
You have people following speed limits, etc.
Yeah.
Whereas in a nation which doesn't have a strong government, doesn't have strong police system and court system.
Yeah, they call it ungoverned spaces.
It's an ungoverned space, and people behave in unregulated ways.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a complete fascist kind of, government with no freedom, then you're going to have almost near perfect obedience to the law as much as possible.
Until they rebel, because human nature is
humans
not, as heaven and earth, completely obedient.
Yes, and that's indeed one of the differences is that, humans, you can say they can obey God's laws, but unwillingly.
Yeah,
right? Everyone has to, in the end, obey God's laws, but they can try and do it unwillingly.
Well, it's funny.
And eventually they bend to it.
God says something very similar in terms of to human beings. So in this different verse of the Quran, the same phrase is applied willingly or unwillingly. You will have to obey me.
Yeah,
God says to human beings. So let's move on from that. So I think we've addressed that really nicely. That this concept of the law of nature is incoherent. Yeah. Actually,
well, it's not incoherent. It's only coherent if you assume that there is actually a sovereign power that can impose the law. It is a metaphor that has been extracted from human governments and human behaviors and is applied to the mathematical and the physical realm, but it doesn't make sense unless you also have the other part of the metaphor there, unless you also have some kind of power that is imposing itself. And the evidence is good. Like it's a good inference that there is a law of nature. We're not saying there are no laws of nature. Because you have to have something which is regulating.
This is saying
behaviors.
There is a law of nature as well.
Yeah, but they have to come from a power which can impose its will on others.
But Ricky Gervais starting at the laws of nature and saying, "I only believe in the laws of nature, nothing else."
Yeah, it's like believing the hand without the arm.
Yeah,
right. It's like believing in one part of thing without the wider context, and it doesn't make sense by itself.
Okay, well, let's go on to the next point he made.